Hi, I'm Mike Gridley and welcome to PowerBoat Television. This week on the show, we're celebrating the 125th anniversary of the steamship Segwun with a cruise through the Muskoka Lakes with 100 of her closest friends. While passengers streamed aboard, the crew of the HMS Segwun prepared to get underway. And just as it was 100 years ago, it's hard work stoking the boilers and managing the steam engines. With a capacity crowd of passengers, the HMS Segwun backed away from the docks in Gravenhurst, accompanied by her sister ship, the Winona II. With the early start, only about one half of the expected fleet of antiques and classics surrounded the steamers. Aboard the HMS Segwun, the guests were settling in for what would be a memorable day on the water, while we caught up with the ship's officers to chat about this historic steamship.
Segwun began sailing in 1887. This is our 125th anniversary this year. Very special year for us. At that time, we were a side paddle wheeler, and we run under the name of Nipsing II. And we stayed like that till 1914. Just about the beginning of the First World War. And because the ship needed a lot of repairs and upgrades, they decided to keep it alongside and do those repairs until 1925. At that time, they took off the side paddle wheels, installed the twin screws and the two engines that operate the ship today. Because they dramatically changed the appearance of the ship, they decided to change the name, renamed it Segwun. Segwun means actually springtime in the local native language. And we sailed like that till 1958 under underground on Gull Rock Shoal. And then again, the long sailing career of the Segwun was interrupted for quite some time. Didn't sail again until 1981. And from 1958 until 1974, it was a floating museum alongside the dock in Gravenhurst. And in 1974, thank God we had a Prime Minister who was on our side. Prime Minister Trudeau launched the refit of the Segwun. And after $1 million and many people spending their time devoting free of charge, it came out in the ship you're sailing today in 1981.
As you tour the ship, from her engine room to the upper decks, you can really appreciate the time and talent that was invested in bringing the HMS Segwun back to life. Every aspect of the ship is beautifully redone and as historically accurate as possible. Stay tuned, because later in the show, we'll have more on the Segwun's 125th anniversary. Welcome back to the 100-mile cruise. As the day progressed, the flotilla kept picking up boats along the route, from 1920s and 30s launches to 1950s cedar strip runabouts. By the time we were approaching the locks at Port Carling, the flotilla was reaching 100 boats and growing with each passing mile. So many woodies were in the fleet that they all had to break away from the Segwun and Winona to clear the locks ahead of their arrival. As crowds watched from shore, it took several cycles of the lock to pass all the boats in anticipation of the arrival of the Segwun. While the party at the lock grew, I met up with John Coetzee, who explained how the event was started.
This event has been about a year and a half in the making. It was conceived about early spring 2011 when we realized it was going to be the 125th anniversary of the RMS Segwun this summer. And we wanted to, as a chapter, think about what we could do to help commemorate that event, given our chapter and ACBS's mandate is to help promote and preserve and protect the heritage of Canadian wooden boats and wooden boats in general. So we conceived this cruise, we evolved our thinking, and we thought it would be great if we could just originally have a group, maybe 10, 20 wooden boats together that would recreate the 100-mile cruise that used to be held from the 20s to the late 50s on these lakes. Then we spoke to the Muskoka Steamships people. They wanted to get the Segwun as part of the cruise, which was fantastic. And then we started promoting it through our club and through affiliate clubs in the Ontario region, and it's grown into just a huge success, where we now have not only the RMS Segwun with 99 passengers, but we've got the Monona 2, the 200-passenger larger steamship that has been added to the schedule as well. Also sold out. We have over 115 boats registered for the cruise. We are told that other wooden boats will be joining us along the way. So we are going to have probably 600 to 700 people in 115 to 150 odd boats recreating this 100-mile cruise that the Segwun and Sagamo did back in the 20s through the 50s.
After much anticipation, the Segwun arrived in Port Carling to join the party celebrating her 125th birthday and the return of the 100-mile cruise. So what was the 100-mile cruise? As the demand for steamships on the Muskoka Lakes declined in the 1920s, the idea to promote an all-day cruise on the big three Muskoka Lakes was born. Quickly, the role of the steamships Sagamo and Segwun evolved from essential transportation to tourism, a role proudly fulfilled by the Segwun in Monona 2 today. As the Segwun celebrates her 125 years of service on the Muskoka Lakes, she also celebrates being the oldest Royal Mail ship in the world, the oldest commercial vessel in Canada, and the 7th oldest steamship in the world. It's also fitting that over 100 antique and classic boats have joined her on this day of celebration that also raised $11,800 for the Canadian Cancer Society. As the Segwun and Monona passed through the Narrows at Port Stanfield into Lake Joseph, the number of woodies that were waiting to join the last outbound leg of the cruise was really something to see. Whether you caught the show from shore or from one of the steamships, the sight was truly wonderful for any boating enthusiast. While the crew did not stay for the return cruise, a highlight of the day was to see the steamships and their flock of boats gathered on Little Lake Joseph, where the original 100-mile cruise excursion stopped to allow passengers to disembark and explore the wilderness of Muskoka. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this celebration of the HMS Segwun's 125 years of steaming the Muskoka Lakes. And we hope she's around for another 125 years, along with all these other great wooden classics.